Welcome. We'll do these video lectures as a way to replace class time, and I hope you find them effective. What students tell me is that they like the opportunity to go and stop it, take notes, and rewind it, have me explain it all over again. That's surprising to me a little bit, but we'll dive in. So let's first of all talk about the rudimentary qualities of strategy. The things I like about strategy is that it puts the whole team together. So much of what we teach in business school, we disaggregate companies into various functions or various issues, when in reality, uh, companies are like football teams. They play as a team. It's not just the quarterback, it's not just the running back, it's everybody coming together. The other thing I like about strategy is that it is very real world, and it doesn't assume equilibriums, for example, and it doesn't have a lot of assumptions in it, because where you're dealing with the real world, you're dealing with change, disequilibrium, um, and things not always operating as theory would say they would go. Uh, what is the fundamental question of strategy? I'm going to answer that in just a second, but I want you to pause the video and ask yourself, what is the fundamental question in strategy? Okay, now that you're sitting at the edge of your seats waiting for the answer, it is, why do some firms outperform others? So really, it's about, why do some firms win and other firms lose? Some people will sometimes come to me and say, well, why study strategy at all? I'm just going to graduate with my MBA, and I'm going to be in a cubicle at the end of a long haul. First of all, by understanding how the team fits together, you're going to be more effective in your present job. Second, you may be a strategic leader sooner than you think, particularly in smaller companies or in very forward-thinking companies where they tend to push strategic decision-making down. And finally, for many of you, I hope that you launch your own company or buy into a company and eventually become its leader. And when you are the boss, you are by definition the chief strategist. So in sum, I am passionate about the topic of strategy. Strategy, entrepreneurship, energy, those are the things that are very interesting to me. And I'm convinced that if you hang with me in this course, you're going to learn some very powerful lessons that will set you apart in very positive ways from your peers, and that will allow you to be, from a professional perspective, a winner. So the second question is, do all firms have strategies, and does that really matter? And I will admit to you right up front, there are plenty of firms that don't have strategies. For example, not picking on them, but if I go to the Yellow Pages, or I go to a search engine and start searching for lawn maintenance businesses in Wichita Falls, I will find a lot of firms. There are many, many firms out there cutting grass. Do they have a strategy? Probably not. Some may say, well, I focus on commercial versus residential. Um, but they don't really have a strategy. What they rely on is primarily word of mouth and customer service, and they compete with very similar prices. And so I'm not demeaning that at all, because that's kind of the nature of the business. But what do they get? They get, quote unquote, their share of the pie. Um, if another company enters in, what happens? There's a little less business for them to all spread around, and they all eat a little bit smaller pieces of the pie. Now let's contrast that with the world that we see. Um, the bigger the company, the more it tends to compete in a global marketplace. And secondly, things are changing rapidly. Um, for example, the internet has changed so many businesses. Certainly, a lot of the retail stores, even the small mom and pop retail stores, are feeling a tremendous amount of pressure because of online retailers. I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with that word. So the technology is changing a lot of things, and it's very easy to say the internet, but when you look out, so many things are being changed by technology, and they're being changed so quickly. Bottom line, it's a very competitive world out there, and you operate without a strategy at your own peril. Now let's go over a couple of terms that I want to make sure that we just foundationally understand. The first is competitive advantage. Depending on what book you read, the definition can be a little bit uninspiring, such as, it's firms that outperform each other. I like that definition because it puts the focus exactly where it should be, on performance, but it's not very illuminating. So a better way to think of a competitive advantage is when a firm does something very broadly defined that others are either unable to match, or have not, they've tried to copy it and they can't copy it successfully, or they can't even try to copy it because they don't have what it takes to copy it. And very important addition to that, that something means that the firm generates superior performance. Again, it's all ultimately in strategy about why some firms outperform others. So I didn't do a very crisp job of that. So let me just say it again. A competitive advantage is when a firm has something the competitors are either unable or unwilling to try to replicate that results in that firm having superior performance. The thing that contributes to those typically are core competencies. These are things that you're particularly good at. The more that you are the only one who is good at it, and the more that that core competence is essential to generating value and improving performance, obviously the more likely it is to contribute to a competitive advantage. Above average returns. These are the funny term or funny words that economists use, but what I want you to get focused on, again, is strategies about above average returns. So in many cases, we're going to bump companies up against their competitors and see how they fare. And lastly, strategy. What are we talking about there? Come back to the next video and we'll answer that question.